How many of you have a Google Cardboard headset? Cool. How many of you have tried a Vive or an Oculus or a PSVR? Awesome. I made this panel because after doing some VR dev and some reality capture and some 360 video and stuff like that, I'm more concerned about what every person can make in VR, not having any developer knowledge, no 3D modeling knowledge, etc. In the past 3 or 4 months, things have gotten such that you can do complete reality capture on your phone in 3-dimensional space. And I did the mom test. I had my mom try a lot of this stuff, and she was able to do it no problem. And she freaks out about Wi-Fi and stuff like that. So these are all tools that every one of you can use if you have a smartphone. Does everybody have a smartphone? Like, say, iPhone 4 or newer? I'm going to guess yes. OK. So we're going to cover 3 apps. One of them is Cardboard Camera, and that does stereo panoramas. Autodesk 3D Catch does things that took me all summer with mini digital SLRs and a couple of Mac Pros. Uses the cloud to compute points between photos to generate 3D models that are just mind-blowingly awesome. And Sketchfab, which is something that works in every web browser, has its own app, has a vibrant online community, and it's basically just like 3D stuff that supports cardboard and all that stuff. If you don't have a cardboard headset, they come free with a lot of newspapers now. They're like $5 on Amazon. Mattel makes a great one that's less than $20. And being in a place that you couldn't be otherwise due to money or travel or whatever, or just mainlining a bunch of locations is awesome. So grab a headset if you can. So why would you want to do stereo panoramas? So the same reason people use Instagram, right? But instead of a flat picture, you're capturing it from a specific person's height, seeing everything around them, and being able to just pop that in your phone and check it out is amazing. So a scenario is you're in an amazing, beautiful place, and you're like, oh man, I want to capture this. I want to return to this moment like in every way that I can. High contrast to that is like your mom at home, maybe in the Midwest or Europe or whatever. Hers is still a valuable experiential environment because that means something to you, to like sit on that sofa you grew up on, to see everything in that scale. You can always return to that moment even if the house burns down, etc. So these are both people with smartphones. This sphere around, say, your head, if you're traveling, represents all the points you can see from the fulcrum of the top of your spine, right? So if you're looking up, down, left, right, if you're not walking, it basically makes a sphere, right? And this sphere represents everything she can see from her focal point on the couch, etc. So they can share these exact experiences with each other. And audio is a big part of it too. So Cardboard Camera, which is free, records as much audio as you took to record a 360 panorama. So that's the icon for the app. So each person needs to have their phone and basically travel 360 degrees, not just 180, although it will work if you just capture a little bit. If you capture the whole thing, the nice thing is, even though normally on, say, iPhone or Android camera app panoramas, it'll capture just 2-dimensional, this is like basically taking a break at each focal point to re-stitch every other inch to make 2 separate stereo panoramas, which is fantastic. It's like, why didn't anybody think of this sooner? And so you hit the share button, it makes a goo.gl/VR link that can be shared with anybody. You can do a 360 even in a browser if you don't have a headset, etc. And this is assuming that both people have a headset. But if they send them to each other, which takes, I don't know, moments, each can, like, with their headspace, like, track the other person's environment, and it's awesome. So it looks a little bit like this. This is the camera app, Cardboard Camera app on my Android phone. I was visiting my sister over break. And this is like the view from her porch, right? So this is something where if I'm having a stressed out day, I want to hop into this. And you can't see it here, but it has perfect depth. So I can see how, far the mountains are. I can hear that there's a cat crying to get inside, etc. Also in Santa Fe, there's this really rad art installation sponsored by George R. R. Martin called Meow Wolf, and I took a bunch of panos of that too. And this is just the intro to that. Since it's so impossible for me to get to New Mexico, it's something that I like to experience all the time. And this is free and easy and works on all devices. Like, get it and send each other locations. It's fantastic. So this is just a quick demo of me in the studio I work in using the app, and I'll time crush it because I don't want to waste too much time. But and this is using an old iPod Touch, so just proof that it works on any device and like does the stitching and stuff like that. The only issue is on older devices, it takes a little while to crunch, and it can be infuriating while you're just waiting, so excited to share this thing. But even then, it only takes like 30 seconds to do the stitching, and then immediately you can share it with all of your friends or try it on the device or something like that. Verified people who have actually seen my images. So check this out. I'm panning this image and then I'm toggling between the two to show you that there is like stereo depth. It's pretty sweet. And the cool part about taking images, stereo images, is that in mirrors or in far off reflected surfaces, you get the depth of how far it would be in the mirror. So if there's a mirror jolting to the other side of the room, you see double depth in that zone. It's bizarre. So the same thing with 3D scanning or 3D reality capture. If you're capturing something and you're taking 1 million pictures so a computer can decide how to make a model out of it, if there are reflections, I was taking a picture of a plant that was on a mirror, and there was a subway across the street, and it rezzed up and made a mesh out of the subway across the street because of mirrors. So you really have to watch out for reflections if you're capturing 3D stuff. So the cool thing is, it takes a JPEG, and you're like, how is this stereo? How does it have audio? But there's metadata, and it's actually taking 2 separate panoramas and an audio file. There is a website called cctoolkit.vectorcult.com, and you can just drag these guys in there and reap all your metadata back if you're super curious and you want all of that stuff. But they're surprisingly small. It's like 2 megs to get something with audio that's 360 panorama. So this is just a nerd note. If any of you work in visual effects, or you can use high dynamic range or reflectance balls or something like that, cardboard camera is an awesome like back pocket thing. Let's say you're on a photo shoot, but you plan to put some 3D objects in the scene. Like the number one thing that sells and something as not being true to the scene is that there aren't any reflections. And so if you take a cardboard camera image, and I've just stretched it out and used free plugins to make it basically a 360 ball. Here's a photo from the same place the panorama was taken, and I'm just going to pop in some 3D objects, right? And they look dull and kind of like, immediately you can tell that the reflections are from a different location than this. And this is just Adobe After Effects. But I'm going to take basically that same Google Cardboard HDRI map and pop them back on the objects, and now you can tell basically, like in the spray can and stuff like that, it kind of looks like it's more in the room. I mean, this is just like a 5-minute test, but even with a little bit more time, it's just great for that. Who has played Final Fantasy VII? Awesome. Did you notice the food at all? Does the food look particularly great? Okay. Well, reportedly, I haven't played it, but there are quests where you collect the food, and sometimes the food looks so awesome. And somebody on Eater really nerded out and was like, why does this food look so good? Are your artists amazing? And I'm like, no, that food looks real because that's reality capture. Like, somebody made an excellent dish, that's where the effort was, and then they basically did photogrammetry and scanned it. And so they're noting that, like, you know, they asked the team, and yes, they made perfect dishes and photographed them in 360 degrees in outdoor lighting, so you have that awesome ambient light, you have that subsurface on like the gelatinous egg portion on the meat, stuff like that, but they didn't really have to do any work making like thousands of dishes. They just did it through photogrammetry. And it looks amazing, but it only looks as good as you lit it. Like if you were standing in front of it and it captured your reflection, guess what? If you put that dish in a dark room, why is there a reflection of a dude with a smartphone? You know, gotta be careful. So Structure from motion is what the process is called, of taking multiple images and having a computer determine where the depth is and just making a mesh. Do you remember 3 or 4 years ago when Apple came out with Apple Maps and they're like, guess what? The world is in 3D. Blam. And people were like, why are all of the bridges and trees melted together? Are we in a nuclear holocaust? What is going on? It's because all the cameras were from satellite surfaces, and they could tell the difference like mile to mile, but they weren't on the surface, right? So, for instance, when you zoom in on Apple Maps, looks great from here. When you go in deep, it basically had to guess what was happening between the trees and the street, and it melted everything together. So, you might see where I'm going with this. If you decide to take 20 images of an object and just let the cloud crunch it out and give you a 3D model, if there's part of the surface you didn't capture right, it's going to kind of melt it together, right? It won't give you like a messy mesh, but it will kind of, melt things. So, popular uses for this that you can now do in your pocket. He would have to hold really still, but you could totally use like your Galaxy S6, S7, iPhone 7, whatever, to basically take many images and get a perfect 3D model of pretty much anything that you can approach, right? It's awesome. You don't even have to be that steady, because the app I'm about to show you gives you a little guide. It uses your gyroscope to say, okay, I need 28 photos. You need to hold it like this. Nope, you didn't get it right. Go a little lower, right? And it's perfect. Other uses, if you want to capture like a beautiful place on Earth that you want in a video game, but you have no skills to model it, nor time, nor patience, whatever. The most recent Star Wars Battlefront game for, I guess, all platforms, really. This is the team out capturing beautiful caverns to basically chop up and put in the game. Ravines, etc. And because you can kind of choose your level of detail, since you just photographed everything, they can get far off, like low-resolution models, close ones, etc. It can just interpolate. It's great. But, it's like you can't beat reality. And 3D scanning it just makes environments that you would love to walk around in. So that leads us to 123D Catch, also a free app by Autodesk. When I was doing photogrammetry this past summer, I did a thing for just ad client work for Baskin-Robbins. They had a polar pizza, and one of the concepts was, okay, check it out. We want 2 frozen pizzas back to back, spinning in space. How are we going to shoot it? And I'm like, we're not going to shoot it. We have to 3D scan it because no camera can do that without spilling shadows, whatever. But I use basically 4 Mac Pros to crunch out all of like the light calculations, stuff like that. You don't need to do that, because with this app, once you take all the photos that it guides you to do, it uses Autodesk's rendering cloud to like determine it. 10 minutes says, hey, I'm done. You want to check out and see if you did this right or I did this wrong or whatever? Anyway, it's super cool. So I was looking for interesting objects around my place the past few days. And I'm like, well, how about something geometrically simple just to see if this works? So something that's basically a cylinder and a cone. My friend Rod Ben is like a graffiti artist, and he just painted this cardboard birdhouse. So that's like the first example I tried. And so this is from the app. This is from 123D Catch on a OnePlus 3. And basically, and I'll like speed adjust this for time too, so we don't have to sit through it. But it guides you on those 2 little tiny platters how to take photos. And if I was smart, I would have gotten basically horizontal before I did the top ring. And you can kind of see where the problem might be. The underside of the cone edge, and it asks you to review the photos too. The underside of the cone edge we didn't capture, so it's going to guess. But because it was all basically homogeneous brown, it's just going to fill that in, and it's fine. They've injected a few algorithms that really cut to the chase in as far as early photogrammetry software, and it eliminates like spare geometry and junk like that. It does a really clean job. So about 10 minutes later, oh yeah. So I tried to find a really organic object too. A few years ago, somebody mailed me a Muppet of myself, and I was too freaked out to do anything with it until now. And I figured this would be a good test too, to see like how far can it go, what's going to happen. So I 3D scanned this too, but I'm going to save the results for later because I just think it's funny. But in any case, so 2 results are submitted to the cloud. 10 minutes later, it alerted me that 1 is finished. So would I like to review it? Sure, let's review it. So again, about reflections and stuff like that, it captured way more than it needed to. The actual object looks awesome. And I approve of this. I'm like, yes, publish. And it'll say, do you want me to email you a link to the geometry too? And you say, yeah. I mean, you could just publish it straight to the app, put it in the showcase, send it to your friends, whatever. They can be like, oh, whoa. Yeah, you finished that painting. That's awesome. I approve this. It can go to market, whatever. But if you want the model, you want to do a few things with it, you can like take it into Blender, Cinema 4D, clean up the geometry, and really just kind of solo that object if you want to replicate it. Like, let's say I want to put this in a game in Unity or Unreal Engine, and I want this to like represent a bunch of mushrooms or a tower or something like that. I really want to isolate the object. And we'll do that here at the end. So it sends you to a page where you can download OBJ, STL. And another reason a lot of these services are free, and another one is Sketchfab, we'll tell you about in a second. You can order a 3D model of anything you scan instantly. So if like I was at Art Basel in Miami where there's a bunch of unique sculptures a couple weeks ago, and I'm like trying to like photogrammatize like all of these cool sculptures, and somebody's like, oh yeah, that's gonna be an Emmy Award winning video, dude. I'm like, I'm stealing this object right now. It's mine, forever. But I could totally just send that to a 3D printer even if I just want a thing to my desk as like a unique object. I mean, it's like creating keepsakes from real world objects is invaluable. It's awesome and free and quick, aside from, I guess, the waiting at the post office or whatever. So anyway, I've got this geometry. I brought it into Cinema 4D, and I just deleted the extra faces just to make it a clean object. And when you go to render, it looks exactly like the real thing, aside from the melty bits under the cap. But that's on me, because I didn't make the camera low enough. But in any case, the one thing that Autodesk 123D Catch doesn't do in its app or on the web is let you view in Cardboard. But luckily, that's where Sketchfab picks up the slack. That's its whole thing, like displaying this on every device in WebGL in whatever format, works on like the original Kindle Fire tablet that's like $20 and in generation 3 now. It's awesome. So even if you go from 123D Catch, export your model, and send it straight to Sketchfab, in like moments, it'll give you a link that you can view in 3D on your phone. So I just uploaded it real quick. And so here it is on an Android device, like 2 minutes later, and you hit the little Cardboard button, and instantly from your focal point, like configured to your height, whatever headset you have, you can beam anywhere on the map, you can stand right next to this object, and basically the object that you just like took or stole or cloned or whatever, anyone can be standing near if they have a smartphone and a Cardboard. It's awesome. So here's what ended up with the horrible puppet clone of myself. And it's just funny to me, but now if I lose it, you know, it's on the web forever if you go to Sketchfab and search for Muppet. These objects, another thing that has advanced in photogrammetry software that Autodesk helps with a ton is making them ready to be put in a game engine. Most of the effort is in a beautiful map that it has baked on, and the geometry itself is not very detailed. So if you make a model with Sketchfab or whatever, and you're like, I want to throw this in a Unity game or whatever, I just dropped these in, and it totally works. So I put a first-person controller in here, and Unity Personal Edition is free also, by the way. And we'll see what it looks like with FPS controls. Everything works, it's fast, it looks good, and this is on like a 6-year-old laptop. And if you were to hit the Store tab and just type in add Google VR or add HTC Vive or add OpenVR or whatever, and even if you elected to, in Unity, when you installed, to grab like the Sony PlayStation Store stuff and grab the PSVR code, you could instantly put this on iOS, Android, Apple TV, you know, iPhone 7, Galaxy Gear, whatever. Publish your new VR thing that you've scanned all of your life stuff into all at the same time. Yes, and that's it. Questions? Are any of the tools able to construct in skyboxes? So if you made a cardboard camera photo, there are presets out there to just open it in Photoshop and convert it to that. It'll fill in the extra space. Let's see here. Sure. It doesn't it only captures what you take, right? And it knows how high you're looking. So if I was trying to capture basically this complete ceiling, I could do that, and then it would basically Gaussian blur fill in the bottom. So there are definitely other apps that will take a full 360 ball, but it won't be in stereo. Microsoft just discontinued theirs, Photosynth, but 360, I think it's 360 Stitch is available for iOS and Android and Windows Phone 10. But that would give you a result that is automatically baked, equirectangular. You could just drop that JPEG into a skybox and it would work. So yeah, you could definitely, yeah. And if it's not that specifically, those search terms will get it for you. But that's just straight up 360. But you can definitely do that just with your smartphone. Anybody else? Who was first? Beard Plaid. Mm-hmm. But also that I was an illustrator before this. Mm-hmm. I was curious, have you seen anything pretty awesome or astounding or any people that are creating content? Oh, definitely. And so another thing I didn't mention, because I was just trying to keep this what you can do now with $10 going to Target and buying the Humido VR or whatever. So there are multiple paint apps, right? So Tilt Brush definitely is one for Vive. That's fantastic. And they've made features such that, like, not only can you paint in 3D space, but you can instantly, like when you grab with the butt of your hands, you can scale the whole thing football field size and like draw chairs, scale it down and draw another orbiting planet. You can export instantly to Sketchfab. Some of the stuff I have on Sketchfab is straight from Google Cardboard, or I'm sorry, Google Tilt Brush. Google's got its hand in a lot. But yeah, in Atlanta for sure, we've let some of the illustrators from Archer that I used to work on go wild with the Vive, paint whatever they want. And then we're able to send it to their cousins and parents in Cardboard with like a 2-click export, where they can like basically view it in the headset, you like beam their feet to another point, really get in there, et cetera. I love Tilt Brush. Also, Tilt Brush exports as like 3D geometry too. So even if you wanted to prototype, at work, like we're prototyping retail displays. Like we'll have Home Depot client in and be like, what would you think about this? Like what if the front door was here and this was here? And then they saw basically kitchen and bath or whatever. Take that sketch, even letting them give 3D input, and then we'll give it to basically the arch design people and let them go nuts. But it's great for prototyping. One more note is check out the new trailer for Space Pirate Trainer, if you can find it, because this one guy who makes trailers just for indie games found a way to basically mount a motion control to his smartphone and let that be the VR camera so that he could basically film make in VR. Super smooth, like 90 frames per second. It's super rad. Space Pirate Trainer. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sure. It's in stereo, and they built a sharing backend for it. I think it would be really easy. So if you have a blog or someplace where you can post code, there is Google VR Code, and like I wish they would call it something else because Google VR is used for so many different things. But a Google VR Photos code is like 4 lines and has all of the stuff to basically map it to a sphere and to do a stereo, like motion, gyroscopic pin, whatever. And I think just the stereo. But Google Photosphere, is that being discontinued? I can't see why it would be because Street View and all that other stuff. Uh-huh. Sure. That's awesome. I need to check it out. I don't know why I haven't seen it. But I guess just stereo is just the difference. What you got? They're discontinuing photosynth, and I think it's because the Windows 10 creators update, they bought a couple of properties. Am I wrong? Yeah. Sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's incredible. I think it's just been outmoded, even by Microsoft itself. I mean, you know, they've got their arm in the AR, VR pot, and I think they're like, ugh, we haven't updated this, et cetera. We're just going to shut it down, which is a bummer because you have, I think, a month left to gather your content. But with Windows 10 Creators Update next month, they're releasing an app that does 3D photo scanning supposedly even better than Autodesk and can usher it over to the new like 3D MS Paint that's coming out. I don't know, but if you have Windows 10, I'm pretty sure it's going to be shoved down your throat in an automatic update sometime soon. But it's the Creators Update. And it supports a bunch of new tools that I'm excited about. Mm-hmm.
Do you foresee virtual reality because of its uses in, like, say, Star Trek, in like a Star Wars game, like it replacing designers' need to model?
Do you have you tried any of the Oculus or Vive modeling tools? 6 months ago, they were super rudimentary and you could pretty much only paint in primitives. And now that's changing a lot. I think it cannot be beat for previs. Things you do in 3D space naturally with all of your motion instead of just on a 2D plane or with like a 3D space navigator mouse. Like it's unbelievable to walk around something and critique your own work in 3D space. So I think at the very least as a previs starting point, it's just superb. But now that like, okay, people are having a card that's a little higher than like a 960 or 970 GTX. Okay, we can start adding real detail here. And because it's like a changing spec, like even if you've updated Steam in the past few times, they change the way like rendering is working. Whereas like they know you're only looking at the center, so they'll basically hyper sample that. Long story short, high poly and like NURBS modeling in 3D space with very, very fine tools. So I think that's going to be like preferred for sure. But it's like wherever you can get the best work done. Like.
But do you foresee like that's the direction that
Definitely. Yeah, for sure. Especially I want to say on like Oculus Rift 2 and Vive 2. If they like double the resolution, that's the only thing right now is like, oh, I love this, and I'm forgetting about it. But since I'm used to a high DPI display, I want that resolution in the headset instead of like a, you know, AMOLED screen door or whatever. Okay. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's pretty good. Yeah, I don't even notice it. Sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I also, whenever the wireless accessory becomes purchasing, day one, I'm buying it. Yeah. Oh, I know. I think it's so high frequency, you're going to lose some brain cells, but I don't know. What you got?
So if I had a fisheye on how well does
So the reason photogrammetry was difficult before mobile apps, his question was if you had a fisheye, which conceivably you could capture a ton more, how would that affect? So the reason 123D Catch works well, and some of the other apps work well, is because it knows it has the EXIF data of like what the focal length is, what the timing was, what the positional data was. And if you add a non-detectable effector onto that, all is lost. It's going to start performing calculations for like a certain focal length and f-stop, but it's receiving different information than that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. If you know the focal length it's adding, and you decide to just run a tiny script on all of your 40 JPEGs to say, change the focal length to whatever, or like change it to 24 millimeter, you can guess it, and it will give you great data. But right off the bat, it's expecting something, and if you put your own lens on it, maybe it won't work. It's worth a shot. I haven't tried it. That's just my guess. Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. Anybody else? I don't think you have any control, but there are pro tools for it that's where the money comes in for Autodesk. They're like, do you need more? Call us. There is a 1.2 3D Catch Pro that can do more for sure. It's pretty high. The Myself Muppet, faces-wise, I think was around 150,000. I did a reduce on it just to see if it could, and I could reduce it to around 60, and because of the map that was on it, and if I generated a normal map, I could go super low if I wanted to. And it's easy to topologize too, because you can create a very nice normal map out of that. So, you know, I feel like it's free for a reason. Like they found a bunch of lowest common denominators of like, okay, well, what size photos can you take with your phone that's going to be good enough that can like upload over mobile, not take long to crunch, et cetera. I think they found an awesome sweet spot because some of the stuff is really good. Even if you choose not to like scan anything, I would grab the app and look through like the galleries, like monthly submission, whatever, because people love to submit their stuff. There's so many sleeping cats and like desk toys. It's unbelievable. But you can totally see them in 3D, and it's very fast, even on older devices. Anybody else? What's up? I think it was like 16 megs, just untouched. And that was actually the zip coming from Autodesk. I think uncompressed. I think it was still that size because they give you 3 options. They give you all of the photos that you sent to it, plus a model, plus STL, plus OBJ. So it's not much. I think all of the magic is how they divvied up the materials. That particular mesh had 3 texture files. And when you look at it, it's like a bunch of concentrated cells or freckles. It's not nice. However, the birdhouse was a pretty consistent texture. So I don't know what it did. It did it, but yeah. I didn't have to model anything, and that was awesome.
So, kind of going more into the professional legalities of things. So, like, yeah, if you were making 3D models of like a desk toy or something, that gets into things like, I get a little group toy on my desk. I can just, scan around it.
Exactly. Right. I want that toy. I'm going to make one, you know? Yeah. Right.
So is there anything in legal-wise that 3D VR is going into? Is it right now there's like a free market until it becomes big?
I feel like it'll be that same thing of like cassettes, VHS tapes, JPEGs, whatever. And like I've worked for some places who have 4 or 5 people dedicated to chasing down and eliminating every single threat. And I know that they haven't adapted to subtle social networks and like black market 3D printing or whatever. But they need to, for sure. I think that my guess is, I don't know, first of all, but I'm guessing that patents are going to have to be very more specific, like describing basically the tolerance of the primitives used to make something. That way, if it can be measured that it's like within a certain range, it's like, that's kind of a thing that I made. I think it's going to be interesting for sure. Like that you can wholesale steal a room or a viewpoint or an experience. Like, yes, today you have to scan around you 360. But if you had, and you can purchase this, it's just not in your pocket now today. But it's definitely at like Best Buy or Micro Center, a 360 stereo camera. So basically stereo cameras, but then a second set that's offset. So it captures it in stereo. And you replicate someone's experience. Like if I, on the top of my hat, put a GoPro-sized stereo 360 camera and went through a Disney roller coaster and published it, that's the exact experience. I don't need to go there. I don't know. It's going to be a lot of yelling and hollering, I'm sure, soon. Right. I know. It's going to be bizarre.
So I'm a developer and an economist.
Mm-hmm.
I hear VR, AR applications, and I think things like you have obvious refinements on things like retail displays, but Amazon is listing like 4 pictures of the object at once. I can, kind of interact with Google
Mm-hmm.
and that sort of 360 display. But what about larger innovations, like about entire marketplaces, like instead of Etsy, this flat thing and searching?
Yeah. Oh, I know. And like VR is perfect for that. It's just how much time you want to spend developing, for sure. There are so many experiences are built in Unity, and through just detecting what you're viewing it on can turn on or turn off, like even the cardboard experience or like GPU accelerated experience or whatever. And I think it's perfect for that. I mean, like you have dynamic loading of 3D objects. If you choose to say, oh, did you want to see this in a virtual storefront? Okay, cool. Make sure there are no objects around you. Now put on the headset, and then you can just like point at an object, click it. Like it's awesome. I feel I work for an ad agency, and we're trying to sell some of those experiences now. Like there's a carpet company called Interface, and I'm making a thing now where you can stand in some of their favorite locations in the world and just change the carpet wherever you are. And seeing it from a person's perspective, like the 5 feet tall, whatever, looking around and being able to change one material is like, is great, is at least twice as good as viewing it online, for sure. I love that. I love design spaces anywhere. And that's another reason I love VR. It's like IKEA has a really good experience for the Vive that's free. And you can change materials, whatever, but you can also grab a bowl of Swedish meatballs and dump them on the floor. And because that's fun. Like, and that couldn't have taken too long to build, because those are some of the basic interactions that come with the Steam VR and Google VR thing. It's like, interact with object? Yes. Okay. Bind to controller? Sure. Okay. Is there gravity? Yes. Done. So, I don't know. It's exciting. And I've told a lot of people about this who could make use of this stuff, and they're like, oh yeah, I forgot. Or like, whatever. I'm like, yes. Were you by that thing you've been trying to model for 3 weeks? Yes. How come you didn't just make it as a prototype to do all your other design? I don't know. Anybody else? Well, I would say go out there and capture the world. Send your friends a Google VR photo and encourage them to check it out and maybe get a headset. I love shooting my parents interesting places I've been. The only thing you have to watch out for is if there are a lot of people and you're like, all right, everybody freeze, I want to remember this moment. Everybody kind of has to stay exactly where they are, because it's taking 2 photos. The offset has to be perfect to maintain the depth. So you have to treat it like a mannequin challenge. You know what I'm saying? Everybody do whatever you're going to do, but just keep doing it for like 5 seconds. Yeah, but it's a lot of fun. I've taken some in like bars in Chicago, and I'm like, oh, I love this place. The decor is great. And then somebody's going crazy, and like I show somebody the photo, and I'm like, oh, this is a really interesting space. Why is there a melty man 60 feet tall? Because he did this, and it captured like every arm. And it makes you sick when you feel like you don't have control and you're seeing something you don't understand. And so you kind of just have to delete those photos, because you don't want early adopters having a bad VR experience. Word. Yeah. Thanks. If you have any more questions, Mark_Creasy on Twitter. Happy to answer them.